welcome back to This Week in Missouri Politics. We're now joined by our This Week Opinion Maker panel. First off, Jeff Abusi, the Executive Secretary-Treasurer of the St. Louis Building Trades Council. Shelley Keeney, the State Representative from Southeast Missouri. Jane Duker, a partner at Stinson Leonard and the most active Twitter feed in state politics. And now that John Lampe's retired, Joe Lakin, the Vice President of Public Relations with Victory Enterprises and the best hair in state politics. So, Joe, we'll start with you. The committee investigating how the governor handled Ferguson met last week and convened. What do you see coming to the committee?
You know, I think it'll be interesting to see what the legislature comes up with. I think there are some very legitimate questions about the way it was handled. I think you have very competent leadership in both parties. And in both houses of the legislature that are going to be looking at this. You know, I think the deployment of the National Guard, the night of the verdict, and a number of other things since then I think are going to be looked at, and I think the public deserves to have some answers.
Jane, you're an attorney. What do you expect to come of this?
Well, I mean, I think it depends on which direction they're going. I think it would be better for everybody if there was sort of a list of topics and say, okay, this is what we want to know. And so then the governor and other state officials can say, okay, if it's money you want to talk about, how the money was spent, if it was how the decision was made, you know. And I think if there's at least a list of topics, then everybody can sort of look at and say, okay, if these are legitimate, then you know those questions should be answered. But I think it would behoove everyone to have a list and to know exactly what information we're seeking and why. I think the public would want to know that it's not just a political witch hunt and that it's not just, you know, non-productive, and that we know ahead of time sort of what this is going to do and what it's for.
Representative, you'll be reading this report when it's done, I guess. What would you consider to be a success? What would make this worthwhile?
I think it's very important that the committee take a methodical, timely approach rather than jump right out of the gate trying to get answers immediately. Take the time to listen and hear from those who are involved at all different levels on both sides of the issue and really think about it and ask the hard questions and get to the bottom of the situation, the events that have unfolded up to this point, and then take their time to come up with a report in the end to submit back to the legislature.
The political end of this, though, is sort of another coming out party for Senator Schaefer with his attorney general run. It seems like now the spotlight will be foisted back on him. Joe, what do you think this does for a primary opposition to him, or how can he make this and get all it's worth?
Yeah, you know, I think in the legislature you have opportunities to kind of showcase your skills, and I think it'll be interesting to watch and see how he's able to maneuver this. I know he's been has dealt with some very heavy issues in the legislature previously. It'll be interesting to see how it's handled.
Jeff, you've seen a bunch of these come and go. What would make this any different than the other ones we saw?
Well, I think that we have to look at this event that happened in Ferguson, and we have to respond quickly to rebuilding that community. I mean, we saw what happened in Joplin when they were hit by a tornado. I think the biggest strength to dealing with that issue and helping those people in that community is a rapid response. So I think first and foremost, we have to look at how we rebuild that community and to get with that program, whether it be working with the Missouri Division of Insurance to make sure that claims get handled, if they're due to be paid, if the legislature has to create a funding mechanism to rebuild that community, coordination with, with St. Louis County. But I think the whole thing is that we need to act quickly to restore the things, the basic needs of the mom and pops that live in that community. And that's what I think has been so devastating.
And I think politically, I think if the committee is just about looking at the past and just about sort of retribution, I think it will lose steam relatively quickly. But I think if it's focused on, look, the reason we're looking at this stuff is because we have to look forward and because we have to rebuild this community and make sure that we, never let this happen again or figure out what we can do differently so this doesn't happen again. And I think that would help the committee as well, is to make sure that it's looking forward for a forward-looking purpose and not just retribution.
Well, Jane, now that the midterms are over a month old, it's clearly time to start talking about 2016. And so,
never too early.
From the Democratic side, who do you see? Do you see a real challenger to Hillary Clinton this time? And then who worries you on the Republican side?
Well, I think that, obviously I think Hillary's out there, and I think she's got a lot of steam. I think there's some discussion maybe about Elizabeth Warren, and I think maybe the far left of the party is thinking that maybe we need somebody a little bit further to the left. But right now I don't see any of it as being very serious. So I think there's discussion at best, but right now it seems like, Hillary is going forward, and I think we realize as a party that to unify ahead of time. We just went through one where it was Hillary and Barack Obama, and that was challenging to heal after that. And I think we sort of decide, hey, if we can go behind one and do it, that might be the better route.
Joe, your firm is trending quickly in Republican politics. What do you see on the Republican side? Is there a front runner yet? Is there a likely winner?
Yeah, I don't know that at this point there is a front runner. I think as we've seen the last few election cycles in Republican primaries, I don't think you want to be the front runner at this point. I'm not unbiased, but I think Rand Paul is the kind of candidate that can really broaden the party. I think he changes the national map and brings younger voters to the table, and I think can really shake things up for the party.
Representative, who can win Missouri?
Gosh, well, no doubt about it. Jeb Bush has received a lot of attention this past week just with his announcements in the media. But I think when you're looking at Missouri, looking at Senator Cruz's campaign and the fact that he has hired Jeff Rose, firm right here in Missouri, who has had a lot of experience building grassroots, reaching out to conservative Republicans across the state. And I think that will be something to watch as we move forward. Not only that, but we saw the amount of momentum that Ron Paul received last cycle. His supporters with those of some of the maybe more Democratic, liberal-leaning who are not so excited with going the same direction as President Obama. Maybe they're looking for someone a little more libertarian-minded, and they might look to someone like Joe said, like a Rand Paul. So I think it's most definitely too early to see, but I think there's a whole lot out there that really could come and maybe throw a little bit of a wrench into things from the normal pattern that we've seen in the past.
Jeff Obusi, is there a candidate that Labor likes right now better than any other ones?
Well, I got to believe that Labor is a fan of definitely Hillary Clinton. I think Elizabeth Warren, I would make a bet that she does not get in this race. But one thing that Missouri politics that I think will make Hillary play a significant role in Missouri is that if we remember back when the Todd Aiken Claire McCaskill battle took part. It energized women in the state. I think you're going to see a woman lead this ticket on the Democratic side. I think you're going to see the female base in the state play a big role and see a presidential candidate actually play in Missouri, where before they tended to gravitate away from our state.
Yeah, Jane, it has seemed like Missouri has become less and less of a swing state. Is Hillary Clinton someone that could put it back in that column?
I think if there's anyone that I can see right now in the field, it would be her. I mean, she just has the machine. She has pedigree. I mean, Missourians, especially Democrats, still like Bill Clinton. So I think she could energize, and I do think the Year of the Woman thing shouldn't be underestimated here in Missouri because, we've got a hopeful on the Republican side in the gubernatorial race in Catherine Hanaway. So I think that could be a factor that could play in a lot of different ways, which would make it very interesting. And for my purposes as a politico, I like to see as much activity in Missouri as possible. Bring as much money, both sides. Let's make it real interesting. So I think that could happen this time. And I think I will be happy to see, I don't think Hillary will abandon Missouri, which I think is great. And I think it's great for Missourians, both sides, and for us to be part of the debate.
Joe, no one's mentioned the name Chris Christie. Is that because he's probably not a front-running candidate?
I think Christie is a tremendous candidate. I think he's a guy who's won a blue state. He's the kind of guy that I believe could win some blue states nationally, and there's no secret Republicans need to broaden the map and win some states that have historically gone Democrat. I think with Jeb Bush in the race, I think that sucks a lot of the wind out of the room for another candidate that's viewed as establishment. So it'll be interesting to see if he still runs.
If you had to pick a favorite right now, who would it be? Your favorite?
Rand Paul.
Representative?
Too early to say.
Jeff, I know you'll just say.
I'm Hillary, so.
Hillary.
You're ready for Hillary?
I'm ready for Hillary.
Awesome. Representative, the legislature reconvenes next month. There was a super majority last year. I guess it's like a super duper majority for the Republicans this year.
Something like that.
What issues do you think that super duper majority will address that's facing the state?
Most definitely, the events in Ferguson will be at the forefront of everyone's mind as we go back into session in January. From the discussion that I've had with many of the other representatives, there is definitely an agreement that we want to make sure we continue to support law enforcement, but we also are very open to hearing if there are improvements that can be made. Whether it's body cameras for law enforcement officials, whether it's discussions about the amount of the use of force and our tactics there. So I think that will kind of be on the forefront of everyone's mind as we move into other issues. But without a doubt, as we have increased our majority, I think the labor issues, and I know Jeff probably hates to hear that, but they will come up. Paycheck protection, right to work, those most definitely are issues that the conservative base of the Republican Party want to see in Missouri now with supermajorities, and I think they will come up.
Jeff, I had a question for you. Some of these Republican districts that are now Republican that weren't before, there's a lot of labor in those districts. Do you think being a pro-labor Republican is more in vogue, and do you think that inside that caucus, the larger numbers of pro-labor Republicans might want some of those issues not to be the first thing that's addressed?
Well, I think you're right. I don't think they want those to be the first thing to possibly divide a caucus like Representative saw last year. I think there's more important things to work on, but I think what has become more in vogue is to really drill down to these union rank and file people to see who they're really voting for. And I think as you get out into the rural areas, and there is still some union density out there, especially in the construction fields, that travel all the way to the big cities to work. These people are constituents of Representative. And, they made their voices heard last year. And while they may have even voted for those legislators, I anticipate that to continue, that they make their voice, that they may have voted a Republican ballot, but they're also deeply concerned about anti-worker legislation. And I think the grassroots game will continue on.
Joe, we just had Senator Schmidt on talking about his municipal court reform proposal. Where do you see that going?
From everything I can see, I think it has broad support. I think you'll probably see a number of municipalities come out opposed to it, but I think it's something that probably will receive broad bipartisan support. I think it's something that's viewed as having a direct impact on Ferguson. I think with he and I believe Representative Kurtman handling the bill in the House, I think you'll see quite a bit of support for it.
Jane, last session ended with a lot of talk about the franchise law and that you have to have an actual dealership to buy a car in Missouri for different reasons. It seemed like the Nixon administration read the law and decided we're not going to follow that, we'll just write our own, kind of like the president did with amnesty. What do you see that issue unfolding?
I don't think it's over. I think there's going to be a lot more discussion about it. I think, here we are going into the end of, Governor Nixon's term, and so he may be a little bit. It'll be interesting. He'll either be more aggressive in doing sort of what he wants to do, sort of with what we've seen with the president, or he may get more reticent and really decide, those issues that he wants to focus on. I don't know if that's going to be top. I don't know if that's a hill he wants to die on. I don't know if that's a battle he wants to take on. It'll be interesting to see how far up the chain that might go. But, I suspect that Ferguson, along with the legislature, will be a top priority in making sure that we do things, to help Ferguson. And I think the courts bill is a good idea. I think the devil's in the details. I think you don't want to have unintended consequences with the bill, and so the devil is in the details, how it's defined, what it in cases. But I also think that the courts are a symptom, not the underlying problem, and the underlying problem is whether.
Who's going to stand up for these speed traps, though? Really, who's going to stand up and say these speed traps are necessary?
Oh no! And I don't think it's necessarily about just speed traps. The idea is, what is operating revenue? What is the fundamental core of how these municipalities survive? A lot of people believe, rightly so, that there are too many of them, and it's inefficient, and it ends up, different set of rules. It's arbitrary, but there has to be some discussion about the fundamental municipal structure in Missouri, and more specifically in St. Louis County. And so I'm hoping that Representative Deal, Speaker Deal, has a bill that talks about, the things that should be included in what a municipality should have before they're allowed to stay incorporated. And so I think those fundamental discussions are important as well.
Joe, do you see a parallel between the president kind of deciding he'll just write his own law and now Governor Nixon deciding he'll just write his own law and say the franchise law doesn't apply?
You know, I do think, you know, I for one am supportive of a lot of these, you know, considered disruptive industries that are kind of breaking through, bringing a new approach. That being said, I think the Missouri auto dealers feel very strongly that the law is written in a way that really there isn't a whole lot of wiggle room. So, you know, while I
A lot of
think
conservatives thought that about the immigration laws too, until the president disagreed.
that's correct.
Last topic. We'll start Jeff Abusi. You might be the best person at this table to know. Claire McCaskill running for governor. Kraski's put it out. It's almost his weekly subject he writes about. Is Claire McCaskill running for governor?
You know, Scott, I don't know whether she's a candidate for governor, but I will tell you, like I said earlier, I think women are going to play a very, very important role in this state's politics from the presidential race on down. It has not been conveyed to us that she's eyeing this race or
You've endorsed
not.
Attorney General Costa already, right?
Well, the building trades haven't. The Missouri the AFL-CIO has made an early endorsement for Attorney General Costa. Again, if he would have a change of heart, naturally that would make us revisit that particular topic. But right now, it's still a question out there.
Jane Duker, is this happening?
I mean, I see no evidence that it's really happening. I know that there's a lot of Republican talk because I think the idea that there would be an intra-party fight is always attractive to the other side. I'm sure we love when, you know, the Republicans talk about primaries. I mean, that's fun. But, you know, right now, I think we have a lot of really pressing issues that are sort of keeping everybody, I think, close to the vest right now. And so I don't expect.
You don't know either?
I don't know either, and I don't expect that we'll know for a little while longer.
Representative, what are you hearing?
I mean, you hear, of course, talk in the background about what may or may not happen, but I think if Senator McCaskill does jump in, she's definitely the Goliath in a Democrat primary. I mean, she's been involved for years. She has been able to raise the money, make the connections, but where she may be the Goliath in a Democrat primary, she may also be, you know, may be great for the Republicans to see her in a general election.
Joe,
so.
is there anything in Republican statewide politics, past history, that would make them this lucky?
You know, I haven't been doing this a long time, but we've usually been on the other end of these primaries. So I, for one, am very supportive of a robust Democrat primary.